Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Parkinson's Foundation Wellness Wednesdays webinar. The Parkinson's Foundation is a nonprofit focused on bettering the lives of those living with Parkinson's through improving care and advancing research. Importantly, everything we do is in close concert with our community to ensure that our actions are aligned with the needs and priorities of those living with and affected by Parkinson's disease. We all want to do our best to support our loved one with Parkinson's. While it does not require special training, it takes time to learn the best ways to help a spouse, partner, or loved one living with PD. In this program, we will offer tips on how to make a positive impact in the life of your loved one living with Parkinson's while also supporting yourself. PD Health at Home is presented by the Light of Day Foundation, whose generosity has made this programming possible. Thank you, Light of Day. The Parkinson's Foundation provides weekly education and wellness programs virtually through our PD Health at Home series, including Mindfulness Mondays, Wellness Wednesdays, Fitness Fridays, expert briefings, and our Spanish language programming, Ipi Salud en Casa. Join us for our next Wellness Wednesday as we return to our social engagement series, Exploring Music Therapy. Next week's webinar offers insights into the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function, Music Has Power for Parkinson's Disease program, exploring the effectiveness of music as a tool for maintaining functionality in PD. The webinar will include demonstrations of music therapy techniques that can be easily incorporated into daily routines. You can find out more and register for our PD Health at Home events at parkinson.org/pdhealth. To begin our formal presentation, I'd like to introduce today's expert presenter. Dr. Brewer-Mixon earned her PhD in clinical psychology and completed a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship in clinical neuropsychology at UT Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas. She worked in private practice for 8 years after her postdoctoral training, then returned to UT Southwestern in 2005 as a full-time faculty member. She's currently serving as program director for the PhD program in the Department of Applied Clinical Research at UT Southwestern. When she's not directing the PhD program, she runs a small neuropsychology clinic, supervises a psychotherapy training program for psychiatry residents, teaches in the Applied Clinical Research program, does clinical research, and participates in a number of school and professional organizational committees. As a clinician, Dr. Brewer-Mixon has significant experience in evaluating and treating patients with a variety of psychiatric and neurological disorders, including Parkinson's. As a researcher, she is currently the primary investigator on a funded study about reducing anxiety as a means of treating freezing of gait and Parkinson's disease. In her personal life, Dr. Brewer-Mixon is a care partner for her husband, who has young onset Parkinson's disease. Together, they serve on the board of directors for the O'Donnell Bryan Institute's Parkinson's Total Care Program at UT Southwestern. Dr. Brewer-Mixon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay, can you guys see that? Sorry, I forgot to unmute.
Looks great, thank you.
All right. Well, I just want to start by saying that I'm really honored to be asked to come and give this webinar today. Parkinson's is a disease that's really close to my heart for obvious reasons. And I thank Krista and her team for asking me to do this. So the talk that I'm going to give today is really directed toward newer care partners. However, if you are a person who has been doing the care partner thing for quite a while, I think there still may be some information that is useful to you. So we'll dive in and you guys can let me know at the end if that was the case. So I want to first just mention that terminology has changed a little bit over time. So we see both the words caregiver and care partner that are associated with giving care to somebody. And the differences are here on the slide. So a caregiver is somebody who gives help to somebody else. Typically, that's a one-way relationship. A care partner, on the other hand, is a collaborative relationship where we work with our person, usually a loved one, and make sure that they get the help they need, but also that they give us things as well. So we provide for each other's needs. Often these terms are used interchangeably, and you may hear me do that as well. I am trying really hard to switch over to care partner, but for many years it was caregiver, so I may make that mistake from time to time. Um, they are interchangeable in a lot of situations, but as you can see, they actually have different assumptions. So what I'm going to talk about more is the care partner part of it. What I do want to kind of start with here is just some information that may be of use to people. So we have about 90,000 people in our country who are diagnosed with Parkinson's every year, and about 1 million of our fellow Americans are actually living with Parkinson's disease themselves. Most of the folks who serve as care partners for those million people tend to be family members or friends in some cases. There was a recent study that looked at a lot of different countries, actually, not just the US, and found out that 70% of the care partners are spouses. Most of us are females, and the average age for a care partner is about 63 years old. The reason that I think I was asked to give this talk today is to kind of address some of the burdens that care partners experience. It's hard work, as all of you know who are doing it. There can be real tolls on our physical and mental health, and on our financial and social health, and so on. So if we are going as individuals, if we're going to make differences or better our lives, we really have to pay attention to all of these areas. Um, Over time, one area may be higher than another in terms of burden. That's really normal. But when something becomes problematic, we really want to pay attention to it, so that we have, the best opportunity to do our own lives as well as to take care of the folks that we are caring for. So I thought about, what do new care partners really need to know about? And these are primarily my own experiences and my experiences as a neuropsychologist. So I am very open to other ideas or thoughts that you guys may have afterward. So first, I want to talk about some of the early stage struggles that care partners have. I want to talk about why it's a really bad idea to try to go it alone. To then kind of go back to some of the common struggles that care partners have. And this is where the new people will get new information perhaps, but older people who've done this a while will be able to resonate with them as well, I think. And I want to end with some of the joys of being a care partner, because we don't always talk about that. And I think that that's important as well. So let's talk about some of the early stage common struggles. I think that early on, dealing with the shock of the diagnosis is a thing. I remember the day that we got the diagnosis for my husband, and even though I'm a neuropsychologist, and even though I thought he had Parkinson's, which is why I put him in front of a movement disorders doctor, it was still a shock. And it took a while for us to kind of figure out what that meant. We also struggle sometimes to learn about the disease and what we can expect. Everybody's different. Unfortunately, the pace of the disease is different for everyone. And there's just a ton of information out there to try to digest as a new care partner. Finding a good health provider for your person who has Parkinson's is a really big deal. I strongly encourage you all to find a movement disorders neurologist, if that's available in your area, or to find one, even if they're not available in your area, to maybe consult with the general neurologist that you guys may be seeing. You also have to make a lot of decisions about treatment. Early on, we just had to make decisions regarding medications and so forth. Recently, we had to make decisions about whether or not my husband was going to undergo deep brain stimulation treatment. And so there, at every stage, I didn't say this, but my husband has had Parkinson's for 13 years. So at every stage of the process so far, we've had different kinds of treatment decisions that we had to look at. Finding help for some of the non-medical needs for people with Parkinson's is also really important. These are things that we will talk about in more detail, but they include social things, financial needs, etc. Another thing that I hear a lot from early stage care partners is deciding what they want to tell family and friends. And that often is basically done based on the wishes of the person who has the disorder, as it should be. But sometimes care partners need to address that as well. Who do they want to talk to, and what do they want to share with people? This includes employers, because my husband was still working. He worked for a couple of years, the first couple of years after he was diagnosed. Um, and, we had some conversations about what kind of accommodations he might need. He was a public school teacher. As it turned out, there really weren't any appropriate accommodations for him, that would allow him to still do his job. And so he ended up becoming disabled. But many people with Parkinson's work for quite a few years. And so figuring out what to tell employers and how to ask for accommodations, that kind of stuff is really important as well. Okay, I said up front that I am going to hopefully convince you not to do this by yourself. Um, I will say that I can verify being a care partner is one of the most difficult jobs you'll ever do. I was also a care partner for my dad, who had Lewy body dementia for several years. It's a really hard job. And I think that if we acknowledge that up front, it makes it perhaps a little bit easier for us to acknowledge that we could use some help from other people. What The problem that we have is that if we try to do it all by ourselves, and I will be honest, I did too for a while, it really takes an even bigger toll than if we reach out and allow people to help us. So we don't want to do things that are going to make our lives even harder. And trying to do the solo thing definitely makes it harder. So I strongly encourage you to rethink that if you have had the mindset of, I'll just do this, I'm fine, we're okay, I don't need any help. Think very carefully about that. You may or may not need help right this minute, but you are going to need it. And so having your mindset open to that is really important. So we want to get help from other people in a variety of ways, and we're going to talk about those areas. But perhaps emotional support might be the best and most important one. These are some of the common struggles that Parkinson's care partners in general have as well. So there are emotional struggles, and I start with that obviously because I'm a psychologist and that's important to me. But also, I think it's really important to know that it is very common for care partners to struggle with depression. And I mean depression, the illness, not just sadness, but also with anxiety and fear and a whole lot of other things. Feeling hopeless or feeling helpless can really exacerbate the depression and the anxiety that people experience. So we, as much as possible, want to try to avoid those feelings by by reaching out and getting people involved with us. But it's important to acknowledge that those things exist as well for people. I think trouble sleeping is something that I hear quite a bit from care partners. Now, in some cases, this is because your loved one is not sleeping as well. Parkinson's does disrupt sleep, or it may just be your own problem with concerns or worries or other issues that you may have going on, or it may be some combination of those two things. But regardless of the cause, having problems with sleep makes everything else worse. So I strongly encourage you to take care of your sleep. Go to your doctor and get some get some behavioral techniques or get some medications or both, and really pay attention if you're not sleeping well. A lot of care partners also feel really ambivalent, which means having mixed feelings. So we want to do care partner tasks often, but also we don't want to. And particularly that's true as the illness progresses and the burden of caregiving or care partnering gets bigger. That ambivalence is a really normal thing for people to feel. It's also really normal for people to feel angry. They may feel angry at Parkinson's. They may be angry at their spouse or brother or parent or whoever they're caring for. They may be angry at family members who aren't doing their share. I hear that actually pretty often. And then I think the most unfortunate anger is the anger at yourself for not doing as well as you think you should at this care partnering endeavor. It's also not unusual for care partners to feel disgusted sometimes. And this is, again, particularly true toward the latter stages of the disease when our, our care recipients really need a lot of help. And sometimes some of that help is gross. Trying to help them bathe or go to the bathroom or do other kinds of things that are so intimate and we're not used to having to do those for people. So it's okay to feel disgust as well. I will say that none of these things is there a problem with feeling them. The problem comes if we don't address them because we don't want to live in anger or disgust or sadness or anxiety, that sort of thing. That really takes the toll even more. We may also be embarrassed sometimes. I know there have been a few times where my husband is a little more disinhibited now than he used to be, and he will say or do something that just makes me want to cover my face. Um, and so we talk about that. But if you are experiencing that, I feel you. It's important to not make a big deal out of that, but also to talk about it if you can with your partner, because sometimes they can control more than they are controlling. Grief, I think, is a huge struggle that a lot of care partners have. When we get the diagnosis of Parkinson's, we know it's progressive. All of a sudden, what we thought our life was going to be like, what we thought it was going to be like right now, what we thought it was going to be like in 20 years, all of that kind of stuff, and the changes and the losses that we experience, those all contribute to a sense of grief. And just to be clear, grief is different from depression. So, the from a therapist perspective, we treat them very differently. You don't want to, tell yourself or others that you're depressed if what you're doing is grieving, just because those are, as I said, those really require different kinds of interventions. The last point that I thought of was that we have sometimes struggles with trying to maintain our equilibrium, to feel steady or stable. There's a lot of reasons for that, but one of the big ones is that our loved ones' needs and their ability to take care of their own self, and what they need from us really changes over time, and that means we have to then kind of readjust in order to, meet those needs for them, as well as retain um, some help for ourselves at the same time. And this requires a lot of flexibility. It requires emotional flexibility, but also cognitive flexibility because we have to be able to problem solve and say, okay, this thing that we used to do, this is not working. We need to switch gears, that kind of thing. So that can be a real struggle at times for people who are doing the care partner thing. In addition to all of those emotional struggles that I just outlined, there are very real social struggles sometimes for care partners and for their care recipients, their loved ones. One of the big ones is reduced social interaction, that you just go out less. You don't see people as often. Now, sometimes that's because your loved one doesn't want to do that anymore. Sometimes it's because they can't do it well anymore. Either way, that leaves the care partner having to make a choice. Are they going to leave their loved one at home? Are they going to find somebody to sit with them if that's necessary? Or are they going to stay home with them? And so it can be reduced social interaction, not just for the person with Parkinson's, but for the care partner as well. There are times when you get left out of social activities. We don't, I think we're at an age where this is not common, but we would not be asked by our children, for example, to go hiking. And that's okay with me. But if a lot of the things that your family are into can no longer be enjoyed by your loved one, that may also pull you out of it as well. And then they just stop asking. And that both of those things, the reduced interaction and being left out, that can really contribute to a sense of loneliness. It's real important, in my opinion, for care partners and the people that they're taking care of to find social activities that they can do together and that they can do separately. But sometimes that's hard to do and depends on the ease of that depends on where you live and how connected you are to other people. But I do encourage you to really think about that. If you are experiencing any of these social struggles, that is one of the best ways to help reduce that sense of isolation. When my husband quit working, he lost all of his colleagues. He didn't have friends at work. Unfortunately, he had only been at his school for about a year when he had to stop working. But pretty much everybody who retires also feels this loss. It's a real thing though, and we can really contribute to feeling lonely and so forth. So we want to acknowledge that all of these kind of social struggles may be going on, and hopefully by naming them, it gives you some ideas about how you might address that if that's something you're dealing with. There are also physical struggles that are associated with being a care partner. And I'm not talking about your loved one, I'm talking about yours. So it's well understood in the literature that care partners experience negative changes in their own health as time goes by. I mean, part of that is just because we get older, and as we get older, we get more health problems typically. But it also has a lot to do with those struggles that I mentioned a few minutes ago with that result in our poor mental health and feeling lonely and feeling isolated and so forth. Another factor that comes into play in terms of physical health is finances, because if you can't afford to go to the doctor on a regular basis or to get medications for what you need and so forth, that really causes issues. Um, so I want to just say that I know that it's really easy to put your own physical health on the back burner. It's really quite seductive to just pay attention to what your care recipient needs, to worry about them getting to the doctor and so forth, and kind of not paying attention to your own. But I really encourage you to do that because you really need to be okay physically, in order to take care of your partner. You also need to be okay mentally. You need to be okay in all sorts of those areas that we mentioned, but this is a really big one, and you can see on the slide some of the things that we have a tendency to not do as care partners because we're already so busy dealing with other things that our partners might need. I don't hear a lot in presentations and stuff about financial struggles, but I just want to point that out that that is a real problem for a lot of folks who are trying to care for somebody with Parkinson's. In some cases, we already talked about the Parkinson's patient who may need to retire, and that can have a pretty significant financial impact on your family. You, as a care partner, might find that you also need to cut back or quit or retire because you have trouble finding adequate help for your partner. And it with every family, this looks a little bit different. But if you do find yourself in that position, then obviously you're going to have reduced financial resources as well. That can be incredibly stressful, especially because health costs continue to be very high. It may sometimes cause people to have to choose, like which person is going to go to the doctor this month, that kind of thing. It can also occur because you actually have an increased need for more services that you have to pay for. So as many of you know, Medicare doesn't pay for long-term care pretty much at all, even though in some cases you can get Medicare coverage for Parkinson's treatment. But if you have sitters or that kind of thing, people who, you have to pay to come in to help you clean your house or cook for you or whatever it is that you're doing, that can add to the financial stress. There can just be unexpected bills, which is true for all of us, whether we're care partners or not, but that adds up. And then another thing that I hear in my caregivers group that I run in my neighborhood, assuming responsibility for all of the financial decisions in the family, which is what most care partners eventually do, that can be really tough. And so I guess that's not technically a financial struggle, but it is an emotional struggle related to finances. Because sometimes care partners are just not used to doing that, or they don't want to do that. Or their loved one always did it and they don't know enough about how to do it. So it can be a pretty steep learning curve for some folks. Okay, I wanted to end by talking about some of the joys, because by now you're probably going, wow, I didn't know that I had so many areas that could be a burden for me. But there are some joys that come along with being a care partner. And I thought of three. I would love to hear if you guys have others. So the first one is the satisfaction of knowing that what you're doing contributes in such an important way to your loved one's quality of life. It brings meaning to your own life as well, and it just feels good to know that you are able to provide that for someone. For me, also personal growth has been part of the process. So I have become more patient, which I was not very patient to begin with, very persistent, and also to develop a sense of presence or living in the moment. So preparing for the future, but not so much worrying about the future, trying to stay in the moment. I learned how to do mindfulness meditation, for example. That has been helpful, but there are other things that people do that can help them kind of stay in the present. The last one is just a heightened appreciation for living in the present, because the reason I did it was to help reduce some stress. But then I began to realize that there are real benefits, emotionally, spiritually, all different ways, for living in the present. And I thought that bears mentioning. So if you were trying to figure out ways to get more joy into your life, which I encourage you to do, to reiterate, pay close attention to your own physical health. It's really much harder to do a lot of these things if you are not well. I would encourage you to regularly talk to at least one other person about what's going on with you in terms of your care partnering struggles, the joys that you experience, and so forth. It's not about having complaining or gripe sessions. It's about sharing that so that people can support you. And there are lots of possibilities for this. Friends, obviously, religious leaders can be helpful. Therapists can be helpful. A support group can be helpful. The Parkinson's Foundation certainly has great support group information on their website. The Michael J. Fox website as well. There may be others that you can identify in your community. It's also really smart, I think, to make a list of all the things that would help you as you are care partnering. So what are all the things that you are doing and what would it be nice to have help with? Not that necessarily you're going to go reach out to somebody and ask for that, although that would be great. But when people ask you, how can they help? You know what you can tell them. You can pull your list out of your wallet. It can be, it'd be really awesome if this week somebody would pick our groceries up for us, and bring them here. Or it would be really nice, if somebody could take my loved one to the doctor, because I have my own doctor's appointment, whatever it happens to be, to just make a list of it so that they're sort of front of mind for you. And then when people ask what they can do, you tell them, or you can reach out yourself. I would also really encourage you guys to talk to a trusted financial advisor at least once a year. It's worth the money that you spend for that so that you make sure that you're as good as you possibly can be from a financial standpoint, because that becomes so stressful if you don't have sufficient money to do the job of care partnering that you want to do. And then there are lots of free or almost free resources that can really improve your life. Some of these are going to be more available to others than others, depending on where you live. But most communities have a library. Most of them have some kind of recreation center or public parks. Religious organizations exist pretty much everywhere. You can join interest groups either online or in person, which can be really helpful. There are also all kinds of online resources in terms of information about Parkinson's and so forth that we talked about earlier. Support groups, I'm a huge fan of support groups. That's why I started a support group in my neighborhood for caregivers, because it helps me as well. And then participating in Parkinson's research, if you live close enough to an institution that is doing that, I really encourage you to do that. I have heard from folks who participate in my research how that brings them joy to do that. And so I encourage you to think about that as well. And this is my favorite Parkinson's patient. This is my husband, John, and this was us in November at the moving day in DFW. And with that, I will stop and see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Burmixon. Really appreciate the time that you've put into sharing your experience as an expert in the field and an expert living through Parkinson's disease. We'll take questions after we hear from our two panelists today who will be sharing more about their journey with Parkinson's as a care partner. I'd like to introduce you to Phyllis Higgins. Phyllis Higgins grew up on the south side of Chicago and is an apprenticeship talent navigator at Zurich North America in Schaumburg, Illinois. Phyllis has over 30 plus years of experience working for Fortune 500 companies such as Allstate Insurance and HBO. Phyllis's husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2020, and her father was diagnosed with Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia in 2021. Phyllis's father passed in May of 2023 and doesn't understand why God chose her for this Parkinson's journey, but knows something good will come of it. Phyllis is a Parkinson's research advocate and Army veteran, and she earned her Bachelor of Arts degree from National Louis University. She is a wife and a proud mother of 2 millennial children who inspire her every day. In her free time, Phyllis enjoys spending time with her family, friends, and attending concerts. Phyllis, what kind of concerts do you like to go to?
Jazz, R&B, for the most part. Those are my 2 genres.
Lovely. So, Phyllis, thanks so much for taking the
Thank
time
you.
out of your day to join us. I know that you have so many roles in your life. And just want to pause and see if you have any initial impressions to share after hearing Dr. Karen Brewer-Mixon's presentation before we dive into our dialogue.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Brewer-Mixon. I learned some things about myself. A couple of your slides really resonated with me. So thank you for that presentation. We often as care partners feel guilty about things. And so I have to do a mental check with myself on that. But thank you.
Thanks, Phyllis. I'm just abundantly full of gratitude when we can have these moments to share in community. And I know we got one question from Elivana. She's also living with Parkinson's disease and has children in their younger years. So we'll answer that question when we come to our Q&A session. Phyllis, as far as the intention goes for today's program and the Parkinson's Foundation doing what we do for supporting care partners on this journey, you've lived with Parkinson's for a number of years in different roles as daughter and as wife.
Mhm.
Now, in today's, in hindsight, if someone were to come to you and say, Phyllis, my husband was just diagnosed with Parkinson's, where do I start? Where do I start?
I would definitely say start with making sure you're taking care of yourself, because it's the same oxygen mask analogy, I guess. When you're on the plane and they tell you to put your mask on first before you help someone else, you can't help anybody else if you're falling apart. To the doctor's point, you have to be good, and it's going to be a journey you're going to go through. There's going to be some good days and some bad days. So get the help that you need. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And help can come in many forms. It could be like my daughter, for example. She doesn't live with us. Neither one of my children live with us. But my daughter lives about an hour away, and she comes by on her off day and she does little things like any of the things that my husband needs to be done for him, going to the store or doing something as simple as I fix his dinner and she's here and she'll cut the food up for him, or she'll take the plate off the table and put it in the dishwasher. That's something that a few little things I don't have to do that particular day. I don't mind doing them, but it makes a difference. You don't realize how much you do until somebody comes in and helps you with stuff. And at first I was resisting it. I was like, no, I got it. I got it. I got it. But yeah, I could do it, but why not take the help and be thankful for the help when you get it? Because those little moments help. Going to work out, it's a definite stress reliever for me. I'm still full-time working. I go into the office hybrid. So I'm in the office 2 days a week. My husband, fortunately, is able to be alone, but there's some things that he just won't do when I'm not here. Simple as that. Sort of like a kid, when the mouse is away, the cat will play, or however that saying goes. Vice versa. I believe I got it wrong, but certain things he's just not going to do when I'm not here, hounding him about it. And I get that. And, so he probably is happy when I go to work as well. But I would say definitely support groups. I see it. I'm proud to say that I see a therapist. I know in the African American community, that is not a thing that we really embrace, but I wholeheartedly embrace it. I could not have gotten through this journey the last 4 years with my father and my husband having it without my therapist. It allowed me to be a better person and to understand that it's okay to grieve something. It's okay to be sad one day. It's okay not to be Superwoman every day, because I can't be, and I can't be everything for everybody all the time. There's this old song, speaking of music, by Teddy Pendergrass, a 50-50 love. One day I'm going to be a great mother. One day I'm going to be a great worker. I'm going to be a great sister. I'm going to be a great wife. I'm going to be a great care partner, but I can't be 100% all the time with every last box of the things that I have to do. So I believe it's important to have therapy so that you can get some things off your chest that you may need to. And also, I think it's very important to find a support group. And in the beginning, we found a support group, but my husband wouldn't go. And I'll be honest with you, because we were the only people of color in the support group. And Parkinson's, as we know, is deemed as this old white man's disease. And there were a lot of old white men in this group, and they were in very late stages of PD. And my husband did not want to go. He did not identify with that. He was like, that's not going to be me. And so he wouldn't go. And finally, luckily, we found a support group through Rush Hospital, a Black Parkinson's support group. And it's an hour drive for us, but we go. And he loves it. He looks forward to it. And he actually talks a lot. He participates a lot, and we learn a lot. And we had the honor last year in 2023 to be asked to join the Parkinson's Foundation Research Advocate. And this is a group that's tied to Morehouse School of Medicine. And they chose like 30 Black couples from different places in the United States to join them and learn about research, because historically, we have a history of not trusting doctors and researchers, rightfully so. But we have to stop that, because if we're not studied, then we're not part of the solution. And we won't ever find a cure for this. It's not just all one group being tested and doing research. My husband is participating in research with Rush University. That's great. I never would have thought he would have done something like that. But we have to, get active, and we have to participate, and we have to see people who look like us. We're speaking at our churches now. We're talking to sororities and fraternities. Thanksgiving, for example, I cooked for like 25 people, which is normal, and I got to cut that down. But cook for them, and after we finished dinner, normally we play cards and do all those fun things. And I told everybody they had to listen to this Parkinson's presentation. And my husband and I did a Parkinson's presentation to tell our family members what's going on with my husband, and to tell them and break some of the myths about Parkinson's. And so that they can understand that it's not just the shakes. You may have PD. And it's important for people to see people who look like us.
Very important.
Living with it, that's the key.
What I'm hearing, Phyllis, is changing the script, right? Of what
Yeah.
like in your community, but also understanding how finding this support is uncomfortable at the start, right? You
Yes.
have to take the effort to find the space, the spaces and the places and the people that feel welcoming and warm to your situation, to your community. Um, and also changing the script of what it means to get help and support, whether that's through therapy, whether it's through a support group, whether that's through volunteering.
Absolutely. It's very important. It's a combination of all those things, to your point.
So Phyllis, I want to honor our time and make sure we have time for questions and also for Gil to share. I want to ask you, this is something that continues to come up for our care partners. And they, what I've heard in all the evaluations that we've reviewed at the Parkinson's Foundation is we are sick and tired of hearing this self-care jargon. What does that even mean? Self-care, take care of yourself, take care of yourself. So I'm going to ask you, what does taking care of yourself look like?
Taking care of myself means at least once a week, I have to go to the gym and work out. Taking care of myself means I have to do my therapy, mental therapy. Taking care of myself also means, like to Dr. Brewer Mixon's point, sometimes you don't get invited to things because your partner can't participate in things, or maybe your friend's house is not ADA accessible for your partner. So it's hard for them to get up the stairs. There's 3 stairs that has no railing, so you can't get your spouse up there anymore. So I make sure that I take time for myself. Once a month, I do something by myself. It may be go to the movies. I may go visit a friend and hang out for a few days. Sometimes it's simple as getting a mani-pedi and getting a massage that day. Um, I'm also starting to do, like, maybe every other month, I take a trip somewhere. That trip could be a short drive, an hour away to another state. Sometimes that trip can be getting on the plane, going hanging out with a friend. So I have to do that. And my husband, I'm grateful that he understands that and he's supportive of that, because it makes me a better care partner.
Thank you for sharing the way that you do, Phyllis, and for being the advocate that you are for care
Thank
partners.
you.
So much. We'll see you back for our question and answer sessions.
Great.
And now I would love to share about Gil. Gil Kim retired in 2016 from a long and satisfying nearly 40-year career with the Army Corps of Engineers. Gil was ready to do something different. His involvement in the Parkinson's community began with his wife, Gina, was diagnosed in 2011. This led Gil to volunteer positions with PD Gladiators in Atlanta, Georgia, Rocksteady Boxing in Columbus, Jackson, Vicksburg, and Meridian, Mississippi, Moving Day Atlanta, and positions of leadership with Dunwoody, Georgia, and Metro Jackson. MS education and support groups. All this involvement is driven by Gil's desire to make life better for his wife and the many other wonderful friends with Parkinson's and their families that they've met along the way. Gil and Gina have 2 sons and 2 grandchildren who I believe are 10 and 7 now, Gil?
11 and 7.
11 and 7. Wow. And I also want to just celebrate that Gil is one of our committee members for the Parkinson's Foundation's People with Parkinson's Advisory Committee. So Gil, thank you for all that you continue to do for the Parkinson's community.
Thank you.
Any first impressions before I start probing questions?
Well, I was really appreciated Dr. Dixon's presentation. It kind of affirmed, kind of assuring me that I'm not the only one going through this. And especially when she talked about emotional piece, that's something that, especially guys, we don't talk about the feelings, but the more and more I'll be connecting with care partners. And it's very important to have open, honest dialogue about what they're going through. Because at the end of the day, we all go struggle some way or the other without the Parkinson's, by having someone to communicate with one another. And especially we talked, the Phyllis and Dr. Dixon talked a lot about the support group. That's a great, the platform for really to share what you're going through. But what I found out is, that, whatever the struggle that I'm going through, if I share with them, I guarantee I'll find somebody to get through the same way I'm going through. Anyway, it was a great presentation, and also I learned a lot from the Phyllis about how to take care of myself, and that is was a very, very important thing, because to me, I cannot take care of my wife unless I take care of myself.
And I'll ask you, since we're on the subject, Gil, what does taking care of yourself look like? What are some of the things that you do to refill your cup?
Okay, first of all, the one thing is for sure, the care partners need to take care of themselves, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And as for me, that looks like going to the gym every day, and also having a lunch with a friend. The guys, we get together once a month, have a lunch, and then also the being involved with the faith family for spiritual connection, and that is so important.
Yeah, there's a theme I'm observing is this need to move our bodies, right? And even more so when we're living with Parkinson's, but it is so impactful for everyone who receives such nourishment when they get out. Either it's to the gym. For me, it's a morning walk by myself with no devices or anything. So that gym could
Yeah.
be the walk around the neighborhood, the drive, as Phyllis was sharing, an hour away to do something with yourself. It could also very well be that group fitness class that you take at the gym.
Yep, that's right. And I do that 3 times a week. And also if time permits, I go to the Parkinson rock steady boxing class with my wife Tuesday and Thursday. When you see we have an average about 25 to 30 participants, the boxers come exercise. At the same time, you see I have a chance to talk to care partners, and I guess we are very fortunate that we are connected with a local church. They are sponsoring us. They took us under the wing as that part of a ministry, and they provide their counseling team have a monthly care partners meeting,
Mm.
and they facilitate the discussion, and about I would say about 90% of the Parkinson care partners, but we get to talk to one another with a professional counselor.
Now, Gil, what if in hindsight, thinking of the years that you and Gina have been living with Parkinson's, what is the one thing you wish you had known those years ago that you might be able to share with our community today?
The men's us is a really difficult to have a communication. We think we know everything, and we assume we do a lot of assumptions. And looking back, I wish my wife and I had an open and clear communication when she first diagnosed with Parkinson's, and not just talking about Parkinson's, just really look at the big picture. And Dr. Dixon talked a lot about the financial planning and support from your family, friends, and I mean, when my wife was diagnosed with Parkinson, we just didn't know which way to go. But I wish if I had this, if I would recommend if someone was first diagnosed with Parkinson, I would say just time out and get yourself together, have an open, honest discussion, and having an open and empathetic, clear communication is essential when you're dealing with a Parkinson.
Thanks, Gail. And I know we talked about this before, how challenging it is to have and cultivate those skills of open and clear and empathetic communication. Also, this I almost want to call it a plague of not wanting to hurt someone's feelings by saying, I need some time alone, and I'll be back in an hour and we can talk about this then. And having kind of that fear of, oh no, if I ask for time by myself, how will my loved one respond to that? So I really appreciate you bringing awareness to the need that you and Gina, that you see now, could have really benefited from in years past, and I'm sure are benefiting from now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Another thing I'd like to mention is when you first hear the news, you have a Parkinson's, and not knowing which direction to go. I mentioned earlier about you need a timeout, really focus on, how you're going to plan yourself, because I look at it as currently adapting my life with a Parkinson and maintaining the flexible mindset. It is what it is. And some things you don't have control of that, but you have a control within yourself, plan, and also identify the needs and help that you need. And one way it is, your family members and support group, your church group, your friends and your neighbor, you got to reach out to them. Don't be hesitate to ask them if you need help.
Thank you, Gil. And now I'd like to invite Phyllis and Dr. Karen Brewer-Mixon back to the screen for a couple of questions that we've received from our viewers today. Hi, Dr. Brewer-Mixon, welcome back.
Hi.
Questions. Just wanna offer some space for you to make any remarks about what we've heard and received from Phyllis and Gil.
Every single time I participate in something like this where I get to hear from other care partners, I just feel really grateful. You guys, y'all have so much to share, and we're all in this. If not, we're all in it together in the sense that we know each other. We're all in it together in terms of the large community of trying to make life better for ourselves and for our partners. So I always learn something, and I really appreciate you guys.
Same here. Thank you.
So Gil and Phyllis, this one's for you, and perhaps you as well, Dr. Brewer-Mixon. We had a question from Evelina who's asking, we're parenting tweens, a 9-year-old and a soon-to-be 13-year-old. Do you have any resources or words of wisdom for a care partner who's also parenting their 9 and 13-year-olds?
I don't have any off the top of my head, but what I would do if I had a 13 and 11-year-old at home is I think I would start really scouring all of the foundation websites I could find. And then I would find a therapist who understands what it's like to be a sandwich person, because that's a kind of a sandwich, right? Between being a care partner and being a parent. And so I think that's the way I would approach it, to try to get very specific information that I needed. You guys may have better suggestions than that, but that's where I would start.
I would offer a suggestion. When I was with the Parkinson's learning group in Atlanta, the 30 couples that all were there, there was a person there who had a teenager, and they said that what they did, excuse me, was they made sure they educated their teenager about PD so that they could talk. And they didn't think their teenager was paying attention. And the teenager ended up going to school, telling the teacher about it. The teacher happened to have spouse who had Parkinson's, wanted to do a presentation. And, it just revolved from there. So you never know. And we need to tell our younger generation about it. We can't hide it from them because they have a loved one. Maybe that's their grandparent, perhaps, that's living with it, and they can help them. And then just cherish those memories. Continue to make memories, and let them play a part in helping you somehow.
Yeah.
I think I don't have a teenager. My kids are all grown, but if I had a teenager or help someone to navigate this, I think I did a brutally honest myself. talk about the Parkinson's, what it is, and this is a slow progressive disease, and their role which evolve as the Parkinson disease progresses. And but being honest with especially the teenagers, and one of a friend of mine lives in Minnesota, and the daughter is a high school, and she totally embraced the Parkinson's and the disease. And what she does is she communicate with her colleague, her friends in high school, and they even raised, I don't know how much money they raised for the moving day. They got energized because this girl, she knew about the Parkinson's and the struggle that her dad's going through, and she recognized right away. She said, "I can do something," and I would strongly recommend that her to have an honest conversation with their children, but don't scare them. Just tell them give them assurance, and kind of walk them through, and have an open communication.
Those are such good ideas. I think I would add, make sure that humor is okay in the situation. I know we have millennial children and a grandchild, and we don't. I don't want to say we don't make fun of my husband, to be clear, but we will tease him from time to time or he will tease himself. So it's okay. We've kind of adapted this culture of it's okay to laugh about if he drops something or if he does this or he does that. My grandson will notice things. He's 9, and yeah, we just being really open, like you guys said, is probably far more important than looking at resources, which is where I went. But I think that humor is part of that as well.
Yes, talk about and be open about what's happening in the family dynamic and have some fun. Be playful. It doesn't have
Right.
to be all doom and gloom. We can be living with something, and our family members who are in the household can be aware in a playful way. Thank you for those kind reflections. And Elivana, I hope that was helpful for you. We have time for just one more question that we received. Curious how all of you might respond to this. So she shares, as an adult child with a father who's living with Parkinson's disease, I can see the wear and tear that it's having on my mother. How can I support my mom and my dad? And when is it appropriate for me to step in to help?
If I can start, like I said earlier, my daughter, she's 29. She'll come over to the house. She'll fix my husband's plate, tell me to sit down and enjoy my food. She sometimes even fixes my plate. Those simple little things mean so much. She'll come out and she'll say, "I'll put the garbage out. I know it's garbage day. I'll do it." Those help. And sometimes she comes by and we just go to movies or we go hang out. We do stuff that we used to do. And that is very important. And you have to learn. And I don't know about you who are asking the question, but I always felt like I had to do everything. And I no longer feel that way. I understand that I have limitations too. And that for me to be good, I have to allow other people to help when they want to help. It's not always a financial help. It can be simple thing as cutting up somebody's food or taking the plate off the table. Or sometimes my daughter comes over and she puts all his meds in for the week. I usually do that every week. She comes in and does all the medications for the whole week. Simple little things make a big difference.
Anything more to add as we close out our time today and offering a safe space for new care partners to kind of start to explore what Parkinson's is and what it means for them as their role in caregiving?
I would just add one thing to what Phyllis said, and that is that with our kids, we kept them in the loop, and we do continue to keep them in the loop as we are planning, as we are thinking ahead. None of us knows what's going to happen 5 years from now, but we do know that our loved ones are going to progress. And that when they do, we're gonna need this thing or that thing. And we've incorporated our kids into discussions about where would we live when we retire? You know, who would have the most time to be helpful if we needed them and stuff like that. And so that's just ongoing, but I think it's part of that communication that Gil talked about.
Mhm.
It's, you know, not to shy away from those kinds of topics. Um, and it's been really good. I think they've really appreciated it and been felt more involved because of that.
The one thing that my wife and I, one of the seminar we attended is how to become an intentional grandparent. Okay, not just have a grandchildren and spoil them and let the children have it, their kid back. But one thing that we really intentionally think about things about how to leave the legacy, even with the Parkinson's. And one of the things we do is we do a lot of traveling. We took our granddaughter to Paris. We recently took our granddaughter to a shopping trip with her friend to New York City, and my grandson to the Baltimore. He loves visiting aquariums and all that. But to me, even with you got to plan ahead of time. My wife, she's not able to go to a TSA like she used to. That what we have to do, we got to plan ahead of time. It might take 30 minutes to get ready. Well, a couple of years ago, now it takes an hour. But we're able to adapt to it, and because you have control within yourself to plan ahead of time, and the life is a full of joy. You got to find you got to seek out the joy in your relationship, things you do. I take my wife to the beauty shop. I use that as hey, that's a date time. You know, date to go to the beauty shop and something. You got to add a fun to your life because it is what it is. But might as well just look everything forward. Don't look backward. You got to look things forward. Enjoy your life and live fullest and be the intentional grandparents or children.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Phyllis, as we round out, any final words, thoughts, words of wisdom, impressions to share with our community?
I say thank you for this. I've learned some things as well too from all of you all. So thank you for that. And I'll just say to all the care partners out there, don't beat yourself up. Every day is a new day. Every day you're above ground is a good day. So, you're allowed to have some sad days, and there's going to be days when things don't go well, but you deal with the situation at that time, and then you move forward. Like Gil said, don't look back. You can only go forward, and each day embrace it as a gift, and just above all, take some time and don't feel guilty to take care of yourself in this process so that you can be a better care partner.
Thank you, Gil. Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you, Dr. Karen Brewer-Mixon, for sharing and being vulnerable and also courageous to share these tips and lived experiences with our community as they come into the community of Parkinson's disease. We did have a few questions we weren't able to answer today. Please reach out to our helpline at 1-800-4PD-INFO. You can also email us at helpline@parkinson.org to get connected with any resources. We are here for you through this journey, and there's a lot more that we could dive deep into, and being really intentional with just scratching the surface. I'm so proud of you for showing up today for yourself and for your loved one. Until we see each other again, be well.